Hi everybody, and welcome to Ask the Flower Farmer Live. I'm filling in today for Lisa Ziegler. She's taken part of the day off. I'm sure she's still working on something. My name's Dave Dowling. I was a cut flower grower in Maryland for 20 years. Now I work for Ball Seed, Ball ColorLink as a sales rep selling to cut flower customers. And I also have the online class with the Gardener's Workshop called Bulbs, Perennials, Woodies, and More. And if you're new to the Gardener's Workshop, Lisa Ziegler also has her class, which is the basics of getting a cut flower farm started. And we have a special bundle offer going this week that ends tonight. If you comment bundle in the comment section, you'll get a link will be sent to you with information about the bundle class. But basically, you should get to both classes, Lisa's class and mine, and you save $240 if you sign for both of them together at the same time. So I'm here for the question and answer period. If you look on your screen, if you're on your phone, down at the bottom right, there's a little question mark in a bubble. That's where you'll leave your post your questions for me to answer. Just click on that and then type in the question you have for me, and then I'll open those up and answer them in a few minutes. I also want to let everybody know that tonight on the Gardener's Workshop Instagram page is where you are right now. Daniel Shavy with Pedal Pickers will be joining Lisa Ziegler at 7:30 tonight, which is May 22nd. In case you're watching a recording of this, you want to be able to watch it live tonight if you're not watching it on May 22nd. They're going to be on to talk about Daniel's farm down in Greenville, South Carolina. He's been growing, I want to say it's 7, maybe 8 years, but he was one of the first students in Lisa's class, took it the first time she offered it. He's taken my class, and they're just going to talk about what he does with his farm, what he grows, how he does it, what he's learned from the classes. And always lots of great information to learn. So if you're available tonight at 7:30, tune back in here to Instagram on the Gardener's Workshop page. Let's see if there's any questions there yet. No questions yet. Be sure to put your questions in the little question bubble at the bottom of your screen. Don't put them in the comments section, because if it's in the comments section, I don't always get to see those, because those scroll by so fast and then they disappear. Okay, so here's a little bit here. Jessenia is asking, how can you find your hardiness zone? For example, she lives in Nevada and they have changed from 9A to 9B. It's really simple. The USDA has put out a new map where they changed the hardiness zones as of this January, and most places went up about a half of a zone. But go to USDA for United States Department of Agriculture, so USDA.gov, I believe is what it is. And it'll come up with a map. It's an interactive map. You can put in your zip code and it tells you what your zone is. Just remember, your zone determines what your average coldest temperature is in the winter. It doesn't tell you when your first frost or your last frost or how long your growing season is. It just tells you how cold you can expect it to get over the winter. But USDA.gov, it should bring it up. Or if you do USDA zone chart, it'll bring you up with a link to look at the maps. Heaven Sent Flower Farm wants to know about Baptisia. Please share your tips and tricks to growing Baptisia. Just received our plugs. We'll be unable to plant the plugs for a couple weeks. Well, the first thing is, if you're going to have plugs that arrive, it's always good to try and plant them as soon as they arrive or within a few days. The Baptisia won't be quite as important, but some other plugs like Lisianthus or Celosia, you want to get those planted within a couple days of them arriving, because if they start to get root bound in the plug tray, it's just going to stunt the plants and ruin your crop. The Baptisia is going to be a little bit more forgiving because they're perennial. You want to keep them in partial sun, make sure they don't dry out, but also don't overwater them and cause the roots to rot. But keep them in partial sun, slightly damp, until you can get them planted. I like to plant them at 18 to 24 inches apart, either in a single row or 2 rows side by side, and you zigzag it. The rows are about a foot apart, and you still put the plants 18 to 24 inches down the row, but it alternate back and forth in a zigzag pattern. Baptisia is a great plant to grow in landscape fabric, because they're a clump plant that just gets a little bit bigger every year, so you just enlarge the hole as the plant gets bigger, but it will keep the weeds out of your Baptisia area for years. And the Baptisia is a plant that will last for years. They started out with that small plug you bought, might have put up 2 or 3 stems this year. Next year you probably have 10 or 15, and the following year you have a full-size plant. So like I said, just keep them happy until you get them planted, but always try and plant them as soon as you can when plugs arrive. Next question. Sunseeker Flowers wants to know, does shade cloth work for ranunculus? We planted ours a tad late. I'm guessing they're probably where it's already getting warm. Yes, it will help. The trick with the ranunculus, you need to have cool nights and keeping the soil cool. So by keeping the sun from shining on that soil and heating it up, that will help keep the soil cool longer and also keep the plants cooler during the day. You don't want to have it build up any heat. So those, if you're growing in a high tunnel, you don't want to put the shade cloth on and block the air circulation. Another thing to remember with ranunculus, if you're growing in a tunnel, once the nighttime temperatures are above freezing at night, you leave that tunnel open 24 hours a day. You don't close it thinking you want to keep them warm on some nights it will be 45 degrees. Leave it open, let them be as cool as possible. Another thing you do is make sure that you keep the sun from shining on the soil. You can either do that by growing them in white plastic that is black on the back so it keeps the weeds out, or making sure you mulch them with a light color mulch. Shredded leaves would work great. You just don't want the soil itself exposed, because when the sun shines on the soil, on a sunny day it gets warm, and then the ranunculus want to go dormant because they think it's summertime. Ag with Mrs. Cox, have you ever encountered termites? How do you get rid of them? Termites thrive on moist soil because they go back in the soil, but then they come and eat your buildings, your trees and shrubs that are dead. They don't eat live wood like a tree, but they eat your 2x4s that are building your barn and your other stuff in your houses. Usually you have to get everything dry. That's the first step. And then usually you would call a pesticide company that will come and treat. They do have things that don't necessarily always dig up and treat all your soil. They have a little bait station they put out that the termites come to that bait, and then it kills the colony. But you definitely, if you've got termites damaging your buildings, you want to do something about it. The first step is get everything as dry as possible, and then you shouldn't have any wood touching the ground. It should be separated by a stone or block foundation. But you probably want to contact a pesticide company because they can do a lot of damage really quick. Heaven Sent Flower Farmer is asking, do deer eat Baptisia? No, deer don't eat Baptisia. It's just like peonies. They don't like it. They might take one bite out of it and spit it out and go on to the next plant. So Baptisia is pretty deer safe. Sunseeker Flowers has a great question here. Advice for managing thrips. They've done nematodes, cucumeris, blue traps, still getting them on our snaps. She said snacks, but I'm pretty sure they meant snaps. I hope they're not getting in your cookies out in the field, or your crackers. Having a spray alternating with pyrethrum and spinosad. That's all you can do. Thrips thrive on hot, dry weather. There's no way you can really prevent them other than when they arrive to manage them. You're working with the nematodes, which is the beneficials. You're doing that. You're using the blue sticky traps. You're doing everything you can. In some years, the thrips will be terrible. The next year, they're not bad at all. They do actually blow in with the air currents. They've found them, I want to say, at 20,000 or 10,000 feet up in the air. They've found thrips up in the atmosphere that high, traveling one part of the land to another. So all you can do is scout for them constantly, always be aware of them, know what they look like, and you're using the right things there, the spinosad and the pyrethrum, to try and get rid of them. There are some stronger chemicals that aren't organic that you could try, but usually those you want to be, that's your last alternative. But a Google search for thrip insecticide will bring up some chemical or some products that you won't be able to pronounce the name, but that would work for the thrips. But usually it has to be something systemic. Your pyrethrum and spinosad are contact insecticides. A chemical is usually a systemic that will make the plant poisonous to the thrips. But thrips can be pretty tough to get rid of. I don't see any other questions in there right now in the questions section, but I see somebody did put one in the questions, in the comments. Put your questions in the little comment bubble that's the bottom right, it's the circle with the question mark, not in the comments themselves. Melanie Bodner is asking about peonies. After the flowers bloom and the seed clusters are there, do you leave the seed clusters on the stem to mature, or do you cut them out of the plant? You should remove the seed clusters unless you're trying to start a new peony variety and hoping those seeds are going to produce something new and different and exciting. Because what you're doing by letting the plant make seeds, it's not putting as much energy into making a bigger, more robust root system, which is what you want, so you get more stems and more flowers the following year. So pretty much all perennials, you should deadhead them and not let them go to seed. Okay. Bloom Fusion in North Carolina had aphids take out their ranunculus. How do you combat that? The biggest thing with aphids is they can have 2 aphids on Monday, and by Saturday you got 1,000 of them. So with any crops, especially ones in tunnels and greenhouses, you have to be watching constantly. Every time you walk through that house, whether you're picking, watering, or just looking for weeds, you have to be scouting for insects. And aphids, like I said, they will multiply like crazy. If you don't get them when they first start, literally within a week, you can go from having aphids on one plant to having on 10 feet worth of bed, and another week later, they're everywhere. Aphids, you can use the pyrethrum and spinosad, the OMRI organic treatments for those, but you have to do something. Beneficials work great as long as it's not too cold for the beneficials. Ladybugs and the lacewing will both take care of aphids, but you have to have them in there before the aphids take over. So that's why it's very important to always scout. You should always be looking at your plants daily. And if you see aphids on one flower, just 1 or 2 aphids, treat that plant, or sometimes you just pick that stem and throw it in the trash, get it off the farm, and you've stopped your aphids from spreading. But the aphids do overwinter in your soil. What they do is they actually have live babies all summer, and when the fall comes, they know it's time to lay eggs that'll survive the winter, and then they lay eggs, and the eggs survive in the plant debris and in the soil. So that's also why it's important to remove all your old plant material at the end of the season and get it out of the tunnel and greenhouse so you're not giving those aphids and other insects a place to overwinter. Monique is asking, are larkspur a cool season only flower? I'm in zone 7A. I wonder if it's too late to plant a second succession now. Most definitely, they are a cool season flower. If you planted them now in 7A, you would probably get flowers on plants that are 6 or 8 inches tall, if they even grow and bloom to begin with. You can do a fall succession, a fall planting of larkspur, late September, early October, and then a really late winter, early spring. If you're zone 7A, again, that's not telling me when your last frost date is, but it's telling me how cold you get. I'm in zone 7B in Delaware. I could have planted larkspur out in the field the second week of March, direct zone. It's also important to know that larkspur is really slow to germinate. It'll sometimes take 2 to 3 weeks before it breaks the surface and germinates. So you got to make sure you keep them slightly moist until then, and then keep them watered until they get established. But it's in zone 7A, we're the last week of May almost. It'll be too late to plant larkspur. Crazy Horse wants to know, how should I treat powdery mildew? Powdery mildew happens when you have cool, humid nights. Usually gets problems late in the summer when you get the late August, early September, and the nights are in the low 60s or the 50s and the humidity is high. There's fungicides that can be used to treat powdery mildew. Just know that you're not going to get rid of any mildew you already have and that's already on the leaves. All you're trying to do is keep it from spreading and keeping it from getting on the new growth. You can use horticulture oils, neem oils. There are chemical-based fungicides. Just decide which one you want to use. And you have to treat often, because once the weather is right for mildew, it'll continue to happen. And the other thing I like to say is when you're spraying for something like mildew, spray the plants, but also spray the ground around it, because those same spores that are on those leaves have fallen down on the ground. The wind comes, blows them around, the water splashes them up from the rain, and puts the spores back up in the leaves, and you start the whole process again. This is a good question. Sunseeker Flowers, do you agree it's about 5 years to make a profit as a flower farm? I'm learning we need to invest to grow and increase revenue, but would love a paycheck. I can say that when I started my flower farm, it was 1993 or 94, I forget the actual year. I did make a profit the first year. I had money I made more money than I spent. It didn't pay me a lot per hour. In other words, I want to say if I spent $500 on seed and I sold $6,000 worth of flowers, I made a profit, but it didn't pay for the 800 hours I took to grow that. That being said, depending on what you're growing and where you're selling, and how much capital improvements, and by capital improvements, I mean, are you going to buy a tractor and a bed layer or tiller and all that kind of stuff? If you can get by on a shoestring budget by doing stuff with hand tools and a borrowed tiller or a borrowed tractor, you should be able to make money the first year as long as you have a place to sell it. You have to have a decent place to sell it. You can't be selling $5 bouquets at the corner 7-Eleven. You've got to be able to sell $25 and $30 bouquets at the upscale, salon down the street or at a farmer's market that has a good customer base, a lot of customer flow, and pays the right kind of price for it. You can't be selling $5 mayonnaise jars full of flowers and make a profit. But it should not take 5 years to turn a profit unless you're taking every dollar that you make and putting it back in the farm by buying tunnels, a tractor, that kind of stuff. But you should be able to make some money the very first year unless you're spending all your money on improvements that aren't always needed right away. Let's see where my next question is. What would I say is the prolific flower that has the longest bloom time, lasts the longest in the vase, and is best for profitability? I would almost have to say Lisianthus, because Lisianthus, even though you most likely will buy plugs for them because it takes 12 weeks to grow a plug, a little baby plant that has 4 leaves on it, so you're much better off buying in plugs, which might cost you anywhere from 40 to 60 cents per plug. But those will bloom for you, depending where you're at, late June, early July. They have a vase life of 10 days to 2 weeks if they're harvested at the right stage. And then they will bloom again and put up a second flush 4 to 6 weeks after you pick those first stems. So if you have enough different varieties, you can have Lisianthus blooming from early July up until frost, because they'll continue to push out more blooms. But you also have to have the customer base that's going to pay $1.50 or $2 a stem. You can't be selling Lisianthus for 50 cents a stem. But to me, I think Lisianthus is a very prolific flower. You end up getting a lot of stems per plant, has a long harvest window, and has a long vase life. Here's a good question. Can you explain more about pinching annual phlox to get longer stems? How deep do you pinch? The way I like to think of when you're pinching a plant is if you pinch it really low and leave, say, 2 to 4 leaves, you only get 2 to 4 stems that are going to grow out of that plant. If you pinch it really high and leave 10 leaves, you're going to get 10 stems. But I like to say that that plant, no matter where you pinch it, is going to put out 5 feet worth of stem, whether it's going to be 1 stem 5 feet tall or 4 stems 1 foot 3 inches, whatever the math is on that. So if you limit it to being 4 stems, you can get 4 taller stems as opposed to pinching it high and getting 10 short stems. So I hope that kind of made sense. You usually want to cut pretty deep and limit the plant to only 2 to 4, maybe 6 stems at the most, and then make sure it's watered and fertilized so it has the energy to put up nice tall stems. The other thing to remember is you can't make a short plant make tall stems. If it's listed in the catalogs as being a 12-inch tall plant, no matter what you do, it's not going to grow much more than 12 inches tall. So you have to start with the varieties that are tall. Then if you want to pinch it, leave anywhere from 4 to 6 leaves or leaf nodes, so you get 4 to 6 stems, and those stems should be tall. Don't see any other questions right now. So let me just see one more check here real quick for questions. Yeah, I don't see any other questions right now. If you have questions, put them in the bottom right of the screen, a little question mark that's in the little like cartoon speaking bubble where the words are in a cartoon, a little bubble with a question mark in it, and I'll go and answer those. Couple things we remind everybody that the Gardener's Workshop is running a special now on the 2 classes. We call it the bundle class, the bundle offer, which is the Gardener's Workshop's sort of the beginner's class of cut flower growing, and then my advanced or more advanced bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more. If you comment bundle, you'll get a reply back with a link that'll give you information on the class. Actually gets you watch a couple of the videos, at least one of the videos or one of the sessions in the class, and a lot more information about it. But if you do sign up for the bundle, you save $240. And then also tonight at 7:30 here on the Gardeners Workshop's Instagram page, Daniel Shavy with Petal Pickers will be talking with Lisa Ziegler about what he's learned from the classes and how it's benefited his farm. If you don't know Petal Pickers, I recommend you follow them. It's just Petal Pickers on here on Instagram. He's doing a great job down in Greenville, South Carolina, growing a boatload of flowers, shipping flowers around the country, and just doing an amazing job. This person said they came on when I finished answering the question about thrips. I'll answer it again, but this is always saved and it's back in the videos on the Gardeners Workshop page here on Instagram. She needs some advice on thrips. They're all over their properties, windows, deck rails, etc., in addition to all their flowers. If you have them that bad everywhere, you're probably going to have to go and bring out the big guns and use a chemical treatment. If they're everywhere, taken over the point where they're just hanging out on your furniture and your deck and stuff, and not actually in the plants, and you've got lots of thrips. And I want to make sure we know you're talking about thrips that are about the size of a speck of dust that comes out of a puzzle box when you first open it. They are teeny, no bigger than, like a little, I don't know what to compare it to, the teeniest little splinter you've ever seen. That's what thrips are. But if you have them that bad where they're on your windows and your deck and stuff, you most likely will have to use a chemical control to save your flowers. Heaven Sent has a question here. First year growing Lysianthus, will shade cloth help promote longer stem length? They would help them grow longer. Anytime you use shade cloth on a cut flower, it will make them grow a little bit longer, a little taller, because they're searching for light basically. And also planting them closer together causes them to grow taller for Lysianthus. I'm not sure what spacing you did. It's recommended 6 inches or even half of that, where you put, instead of 4 plants per square foot, either 6 or 8 plants per square foot. That way they grow taller to outgrow each other. But the shade cloth will help promote longer stems. And here someone has some of her Lysianthus. The edges of the leaves are turning brown. They look great otherwise. Usually it's not thrip damage on the edges of the leaves, and you only notice thrip damage on the darker colors, which is usually more of a scrape, like on a purple or a darker color. You'll see like little lines and streaks on the flowers. If it's the edges, that sounds like either sunburn, or if you've sprayed them with anything and they had a reaction to it. That is, if you sprayed any insecticide or any fertilizer, they can sometimes get a burn from when the sun then shines on that. Flower, can't tell what the real name is, Flower Bloomer JK62. I divided my false indigo, which is Baptisia, and shocked it, and all the leaves are brown. Can I cut it to the ground and leave the roots to grow? Yes, that's what I would do. If it's literally turned brown and the stems are definitely brown and not green on the inside and going to push out new leaves, go ahead and cut off those dead branches. Baptisia roots are pretty tough. I would expect them to survive and put up some more roots, some more stems in the next few weeks. Keep them slightly watered. Don't overwater them or they're going to rot, but they should branch back out. Now, one thing to know, you should always transplant or divide perennials when they're dormant, which means usually mid-October to early March. To try and do it when they have lots of growth above the, lots of leaves and growth or flowers, it's not usually a good time to do it, because what the plant does, it says, oh, I can't take this. I'm going to let all my leaves and branches die, and I'm just saving my roots till next year. So it's best to do it in the wintertime when they're dormant, so then they'll come back up to the new place and never know they're removed. The best food for annuals. Well, first of all, you should always do a soil test to make sure you're not giving more nutrients than what is needed. Most universities do a soil test either for free or for really cheap, like $5 or $10. And that'll tell you if you need nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and also any micronutrients that you might be missing. A good balanced fertilizer is always a good idea to start with, something like a 10-10-10, or sometimes a slightly bigger, higher middle number, like 8-10-8 or 5-10-5. It also depends whether you're going to be using granular fertilizer, you mix in the soil when you first plant, or you're going to be side dressing with a liquid or like an organic fish emulsion or bone meal or something like that. It's hard to say what's the best. They're all good, it's just they're all different. Really good compost has a lot of nutrients in it, but it's usually not, or sometimes it isn't enough to last the whole season, so you may have to add more later. The other thing I always like to remind people is if you have a plant you're expecting to keep growing and blooming all summer, whether it's a zinnia or a dahlia or something that you want to keep cutting on it for months at a time, you most likely will need to fertilize those plants again throughout the growing season. I like to say they've grown the roots, reached all the food they can reach, they've eaten that food, now you need to give them some more if you want them to keep growing. But a one cut and done crop like a celosia or a sunflower, the fertilizer starting in the soil is usually enough, especially for the sunflowers. Too much fertilizer on sunflowers, you get a big green leafy plant, and it's just a lot of extra labor to strip off those big leaves, and you get stems the size of broomsticks. Here's a good one. What are my favorite perennials other than Baptisia? My number one perennial is peony. You can't go wrong with peony unless you're too far south, zone 8B and warmer, it doesn't really work. But they can take zone 3 and 4, really cold. It's a little more expensive to get them started, but once they're established after two to 3 years, they will give you peony flowers for the rest of your life, and you'll make money off of them forever. So peonies are number 1 on my list. Baptisia would be number 2 or 3. Also up there is mountain mint, the variety called Pycnanthum muticum, M-U-T-I-C-U-M. Gooseneck loosestrife, Lismachia clethroides. Some people think it's an invasive plant. It does creep a little bit. That just gives you more flowers to harvest and sell. Sedum autumn joy is amazing, always productive. Tall phlox like David lavender, some of the other ones like that. That's all that's coming off the top of my head right now. Achillea or yarrow, moonshine, and gold, coronation gold are both good ones that can be dried. And if you take my class, you get a whole list of about 30 or 40, I forget how many perennials to grow in your cut flower farm. What group of snaps can I start for fall blooms, and how far ahead should I start the seedlings? Well, snapdragon seedling, whether you're growing in soil blocks, plugs, or ordering in plugs from a grower, take about 4 to 6 weeks to grow. So you don't want to start them 10 or 12 or even 8 weeks before you want to plant them out, because they're going to get root bound, overgrown, too tall, and not be good. So they're ready to plant out in about 4 weeks. So don't plant them too soon. But then the question is, what group of snaps can I start for fall blooms? If you don't know about the snapdragon groups, go on YouTube and look at the Gardener's Workshop. Lisa and I did a great video about snapdragons and the groups and when you should plant them. But if you want snapdragons to bloom in the fall, you want to use a group 2 or a group 3. Now that group 3 could be a 3/4, or the 2 could be a 1/2, but it has the number 2 or the number 3 in the group, and that will work for the fall. And you want to make sure they bloom before frost and freezing. So you want to start them 4 weeks before you plant them out. It's another 10 weeks after you plant them. So count from your frost date, count back a week or two, count the 10 weeks to grow, 4 weeks to grow the seedlings, and that's when you want to start your seed. And Liam Murphy's asking, where's a good place to purchase bulbs? I work for Ball Seed or Ball ColorLink. We sell cut flower varieties of bulbs, tulips, daffodils, lilies, all those from 3 different suppliers, basically. Edney Flower Bulbs, which is out of New Jersey, Leo Burbe, which is out of Ohio, and also for another one we call Bulbs and Bare Root by Unix. It's actually a distributor out of Holland that ships from either a New Jersey or a Michigan warehouse. You can buy from all 3 of those through Ball Seed. There are some other suppliers out there. I want to say Netherland Bulb, ADR Bulbs, but of course I work for Ball Seed, so I kind of would like you to order from us. And if you have a question about getting an account set up with Ball Seed, just call the Ball office at 800-686-7380, and they can get you an account set up over the phone and take your orders for you. And I don't see any more questions. And I think my time is up. It's 1 o'clock. Just to remind everybody about the bundle. If you type bundle in the comment section, you'll get automatic reply with the link to a preview of the online class. That's the beginner basics cut flowers and the bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more. There's a special price going on through until tonight. Daniel Shavy will be on Instagram tonight at 7:30 with Lisa Ziegler talking about his farm and how the classes have helped him. And also, if you don't follow me on Instagram, my Instagram is Dave M as Matthew Dowling, Dowling. Head over there and give me a follow too. I'll be back, I think the end of June is the next time I'll be here again. I'm usually doing the 4th Wednesday of the month, or maybe it's the 3rd, I forget. But come back again every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1 for Ask the Flower Farmer with the Gardener's Workshop. Bye-bye, everybody.